So we're going to go ahead and start tearing all these accessories off. As you can see, we have the alternator bracket here, smog pump bracket down here, and on this side we have the air conditioner pump, which bolts to the cylinder head, and your power steering pump and water pump. So we're going to take all these accessories off so he can get them cleaned up and painted or chromed or whatever he's going to do to them. And we'll go ahead and tear this engine down and get it ready for a complete rebuild. Well, as you can see, I've gone ahead and taken off all the bolt-on accessories off the long block. This is pretty much what you consider a long block, less the exhaust manifolds. We're going to take the exhaust manifolds off next. They have 8 bolts, 2 bolts per cylinder. So you've got 2, 4, 6, and 8 bolts altogether. They're a 9/16 size socket. Same thing over here on this side. 2, 4, 6, and 8 bolts. The last one being back here. So we'll take these exhaust manifolds off. We'll be down to the bare. Hey, what's that? And after we take off the exhaust manifolds, we're going to go ahead and first we'll take the valve covers off. This is the valve covers, and about 8 bolts all the way around that hold that on. Same thing on this side. After that, as you can see, I've already taken out the intake manifold bolts, but they all go in here. That holds this whole intake manifold assembly on. Should pop right off now. So next we're going to take these exhaust manifolds off. Now these little heat deflector shields are something that you should make sure you put back on, because these protect your spark plug wires from burning, and I've seen people make the mistake of not putting them back on, just probably because they're being lazy, but that's a really important thing. But we're going to have these all cleaned up and painted. Next we're going to go ahead and take off our valve cover bolts. Well, now that I've gotten all the valve cover bolts out, we're going to go ahead and pop the valve cover off. And I just use a big screwdriver and try to put it between the intake manifold and give it a little twist. See if it pops loose. Oh, these aren't even barely on. It came right off. So we'll set these aside. Everything we're having cleaned is going in a box, and all the bolts in a coffee can over here. So we're going to have that stuff cleaned at the machine shop. It's kind of like the oil was kind of dirty. Probably has a lot of miles on this thing. This one came off easy too. You can see it's starting to have a little sludge build up in here on top of the valve cover. So they probably haven't changed the oil as often as they should have. So that's not a good sign. Alright, looks like we have one more intake manifold bolt, or a couple of them to take off. So we'll take those off, and then we'll pull that intake manifold off. Now it's a good idea to take note and remember which of your intake manifold bolts was actually a studded bolt like that, which maybe an accessory bracket or something might fit onto, or they'll just have a straight bolt with a flat head on it. But on this particular one, it had a couple on here that held the air conditioner bracket on, and a third one back here also. I believe this one held the coil bracket on. So you got to take note of that kind of stuff. Alright, I think we have all the bolts out. Appears to be. So we're going to go ahead and try to find a safe place to stick this pry bar. Looks like this might work right here. Pop it loose. Came right loose. Go ahead and pull this baby off. Don't get your fingers stuck in there. That's all there is to that. Alright, the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and take off all the rocker arms, the rocker arm nuts, and the pivot balls that are inside the rocker arms. We're going to pull all the push rods out, set all that stuff aside, and we're going to send that in to get it cleaned also. After that, we'll go ahead and take all the head bolts off and remove the cylinder head from the engine. When you take these off, it's a good idea to inspect them and make sure they're not wore out. They can get wore out on either end, on the valve end and the push rod end. And also look at your push rod ends. Should be nice and shiny and chrome looking. We're going to have these cleaned and make sure that they are clean all the way through, because these are just a hollow tube that oil passes right through this tube. So you need to make sure that little passage going through is clear. Yeah, this has definitely been abused. Go ahead and take these cylinder head bolts out. Actually, I think I'm going to zap these spark plugs out. So we're going to go ahead and take these cylinder head bolts out. Be careful that make sure the socket goes on, the nut fits properly, or else you might round one off. I've had that happen before. I'm going to have to get a shallow socket. Some of these are kind of a tight fit. Alright, that one's going to fit just fine. Don't try to force a big socket in places they don't fit, that's for sure. Before we take out the cylinder head bolts, we're going to go ahead and remove all the rocker arm studs and all the push rod guide plates, because some of these head bolts are actually really close to that and it's hard to get your socket in there, so it's best to take these off anyway when you have your heads worked on. And when you're putting these rocker arm studs back in, make sure you put a little dab of silicone or thread sealer on these when you put them in, or they can actually leak coolant into your oil. So you have to make sure to do that. It'll leak right through the threads, no matter how tight you tighten it. So we'll go ahead and take these head bolts out. So I'm noticing on these front ones, there's a lot of dirt and corrosion in here between the bolt and the head. So I'm going to stick a little ice pick or screwdriver and clean out around that bolt head so I don't round off the bolt. I'm sure you'll be able to see how all the dirt comes out of here. Watch this. Especially this one is really grimy. Couldn't even get the socket on it. It was so dirty. If you try to put the socket on when it's all dirty like that, probably could round the head of the bolt right off first time you try to take it off, because it won't go sink down and fit on the bolt head like it's supposed to. Okay, that ought to be good enough.